Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to start a fun little series on my channel called Tarot Quest. So this practice takes the idea of my one-shots a step further and incorporates an element of gameplay into the reading. So before we dive in, let's talk briefly about what a tarot quest is. Basically, it's just a thing I made up. So similarly to a one-shot reading, a quest within the context of this practice is the process of gamifying a tarot reading. We'll be using different decks and a set or two of dice to help us create a little adventure on the table, which we will then turn into an actual reading. So as this is one of those things that it's a bit easier to explain as you go, let's jump on in. So we're going to start today with a actually fairly complex one. I will show you a much more simplified version of this that is a little less gamified, but as it is the kind of point of this series to really dive into gamifying our tarot readings, I thought we would just jump right in with one of the more elaborate ones. So this is a quest in the sense of we have an objective, we have something that we're going to try to complete within the context of this reading, and we're going to adventure through the reading in order to discover what that is. So for this particular quest, this is the Friends and Foes quest, I've chosen a couple of different decks to help me represent different elements and areas of the reading. So first I've got a deck to represent friends, and as we play through this quest, you'll hopefully see how these all come together. I'm actually using the deck of many friends to represent my friends. This is a game deck, so it's a deck meant to be used in tabletop gaming, and so it has the game element kind of already built into it. Then over here I have, you guessed it, the deck of many foes, and that's what I'm going to be using for this side of my reading. Now you don't necessarily have to have these two decks. You can use any decks, any tarot, any oracle. You can also use a single deck for this whole process, just dividing them up into the different piles. So deck of friends, deck of foes, representing my friends and foes in my reading. Then in the center here, I have the Phenomena Oracle. Now I will say that these two are mass market, and this deck it's indie, and I do believe it is going out of print, or at least going out of stock. I'm really unsure exactly which, but again, any oracle, any deck, any tarot will work for this. And what this is going to represent is kind of like the quest, the thing that we're trying to achieve, or what our friends and foe are kind of fighting for. Then I've got my tarot deck over here. So these are all oracle or game decks. We're going to just call these oracles for lack of a better term. Oracles, game decks, whatever it is you're using. Again, you could totally use tarot for this. But then I've got an actual tarot deck, and I'm using White Newman Tarot for this, which is going to represent each step of the process. Also, I have a pad of paper here because I will be needing to sort of track my progress through this whole game, through this quest. I am using this adorable side quest notepad, which I got from the Well-Appointed Desk, and I will leave a link below for that because it's absolutely perfect for this kind of work. Of course, I have a pen so I can note things down, and I have my set of D&D dice. This is a just traditional, generic, I think $5 set that I got off of Amazon. And I'm going to be using the D20 primarily, but I will be using the full set at the end of the quest. And at the end, I will also be using the dice casting system that I developed with Lisa Pepez. This is a free system that we put together. It's available through both of our channels. Links below. We both have videos talking about how to actually go about the system. I'm going to be using not only the information here and the associations for each of the dice, but I'm also going to be using the 3-card method. Now, I could also use the 6-card method in this, and you'll see at the end how I could swap back and forth between the two. But for the sake of the length of this game here, this quest, I'm just gonna do 3 rounds. So this is a really fun game where I'm just gonna play 3 rounds, and I'm gonna see whether the friend or the foe is going to progress along the quest line. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways that you can do the rolling portion to begin each round. So to start with, let's just say we're just using 1 set of dice. So to start with for round 1, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll my D20, and depending on the number that comes up, I'm going to determine whether it's a friend or a foe. Now, before I get to that point, I've already shuffled all these decks, so I'm going to flip over my first card and see what we are questing for. And we're questing for the sun. So I'm going to give my D20 a roll. I do have a number system set out for this. So if it's a 1, then basically it's a fail and have to roll again. If it's a 2 through 10, then the foe wins the roll. And if it's an 11 to 19, then the friend wins the roll. And if it's a 20, then I'm just gonna give myself kind of like a bonus card. So I'll show you how that all works in practice. So let's just do it with a single dice set first. So I got a 13, so that would be the friend card. So the friend in this case wins the sun, the first step on our journey. And we're just, for the fun of it, we're just going to turn it over and see who the friend is Andrake the giant. This particular giant used to be a prize fighter, but he is no longer working as a mercenary and freelance leg breaker. He's a lover of theater and once nursed ambitions of becoming a stage actor. So my theater loving giant here, who really wants to step into the sun, step into his moment, his glory. Maybe he wants to go into the theater now that he's no longer a leg breaker. I've already shuffled my tarot deck, but I'm going to go ahead and pull a card so I can see what we're going to get in relation to that. So I've got the Page of Swords. So I'm just going to kind of create a little, I probably need to move all of this up now that I've got more cards on the table. I'm just going to create some little card piles here, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with those card piles at the end. I'm just going to make a note that it was a friend. I could make a note that it was a 13. So if I were going to use this as a dual dice method, which is a lot of fun if you do have multiple sets of dice, I would choose a dice set for my friends and a dice set for my foes. So let's see, my foes have the black dice set over here, and my friends are going to use the pink one. So let's go on to round 2. And what are we playing for in round 2? The second step along our quest is the tide. And for the fun of it, let's go ahead and do the dice roll for this one. So, our foes got a 17 and our friends got a 13. Now I could make note of that too if I was like wanting to keep a record of this whole experience and how my rolls are going, how the journey is going. In this case, our foes have won. So let's see who our foe is. So we've got Dimitri Stover, I think it says, and the race is a human shapeshifter. So it says, cursed to transformed into a bloodthirsty, fiery werebear. Dimitri has largely failed to rein in his bestial instincts. Okay, so this would tell me, if I was looking at this in terms of a reading, this might represent to me as like an inability to sort of rein in unhealthy behaviors. And then let's go ahead and pull a tarot card to see what our message is going to be around this. So we got the 5 of Cups. How appropriate is that? I love that. And I'm just kind of making a little note just so I remember who's friend, who's foe, and all of that. Another thing you can do is, because these are actually would be considered face up cards, I could kind of look at this and go, okay, our friend is a halfling and our foe is a demon. So interesting. So we've got a halfling and a demon. And what they're questing for in the next portion of our quest is rain. So maybe some cleansing. Let's see who wins. Let's go ahead and do the dual roll for these. Let's roll our friend first, who got a 10. And our foe, who got a 4. So our friend, our little halfling friend here, is going to take us on the next stage of the quest. This is Kithling Greenborough, a halfling, dispatched to the region by unknown superiors. Kithri has been instructed to bring peace to the region, though what ends, you do not know. Interesting. Okay, so our little halfling with the rain. Let's see here what our message is going to be. Now again, you could do this for 6 rounds with 6 cards. You could actually do this with as many as you want, but with the dice casting system, 3 or 6 works best, unless you want to start incorporating multiple sets of dice, which you are definitely welcome to do. So we've got the Queen of Pentacles over here. So really cool. So let's just move all of this out of the way for a moment, because now I actually want to look at my cards. So really interesting, if I'm just looking at this as a reading now to complete, like I've done my quest, and this is my reading now at the end of it. I'm going to look at is every friend is something that is supporting me right now. Every foe is something that's kind of taking from me at the moment. So we have that giant. And if you remember what I said about the giant is the character that really put aside who he used to be, stepping into this sun moment of stepping into the light to be the person that he wants to be. Remember, it said he wanted to be in theater. And so maybe he's leaving behind mercenary life to step into the sun and be in the theater. And we have this Page of Swords. So what this little collection here is telling me that maybe it's time for me to step into the sun, or maybe me stepping into the sun, and the things that I'm learning, the things that I'm currently researching and cultivating are going to help me to step into the sun. That's going to help me become who it is that I'm trying to become, right? Because again, this is things that are supporting me. So now here in the center, tides are about the ebb and flow, right? And we have this werebear who doesn't have the ability to control himself very well. And so maybe that relates to that ebb and flow energy of sometimes he's the bear, sometimes he's the human. Maybe he doesn't have such great control over his shape-shifting ability. And we've got the Five of Cups. So that's really creating a lot of emotional discourse in his life. And if we're looking at this as a personal message, maybe it is that swing from one state of being to another that maybe is shifting too quickly that is causing this disharmony. Again, trying to step out into the light of stepping into that sun energy. We've got this sort of emotional discourse, this back and forth ebb and flow that maybe isn't necessarily a healthy ebb and flow. And then over here we have our little halfling who's coming in and, like they said, is trying to like save the day, right? Trying to wash away. We've got the rain card. So now we're at this point of it's time to wash away the negativity of the werebear and this emotional disharmony here. Step into that healing energy. We've got the Queen of Pentacles. So maybe that's really about grounding into the things that do actually support us, so that we can kind of bring some balance to this. And again, learn those things that we need to learn in order to fully step into the sun energy of who we really want to become. So at this point, you can totally stop here if you want, or you can add a whole nother layer to it and go ahead and add the dice casting system over it. Because I've kind of got this really broad idea of like what this reading is. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to do cast over the top of the cards. I'll show you that in the next little sample that I do. For this, I'm just going to cast over to the side here so we can just pull our numbers out. So from our first round, we're going to use our D4, which I got a 1, and our D20, which I got a 17. So our 1 is telling us this is relating to the elements of air, the intellectual, the mind. That really makes sense when we're looking at our Page of Swords card. And then our archetypal energy, which is maybe that underlying beneath it, is a 17, and that's the Star, which fits really well with actually this whole idea of kind of like going for your purpose, finally stepping into it, trying to figure out what you need to know to get there, right? Works great. I love it. So in our second column here, and what ended up being our foe, we're going to have our D12 and our D10s. So our D12 kind of represents the focus. So what is this overall reading about, or what does it relate to? The focuses in the dice casting system are loosely based around the 12 houses of the zodiac. So we have a 9. So again, we're looking at purpose. We're looking at spirituality, wisdom, vision. Again, really tying back into this whole idea of maybe finding your life's purpose, stepping into your life's purpose. And then for our D10s, this is kind of like where we're at in this process currently. And I got a 98. So the way you read your D10s, in case you're unfamiliar, is your double number is your tens place and your single number is the ones place. So put them together and we get 98. So 90s in the dice casting system is all about amplification, culmination, and fruition. So as I read them progressively through those numbers, I would be looking at a 98 is like almost at the very, very end, right? It's just one off of being a 99. So that would lead me to fruition. So where I'm at is really starting to step into this whole idea of living the purpose, remembering that there's going to be some emotional disharmony around that, and I need to be aware of that. So then in our third and final column, we have our D8 right here and our D6. So our D8 is phase. And I kind of look at this, and Lisa and I have had some discussions about phase because it really depends on the type of reading that we're doing. I feel like it's the dice position that kind of like fluctuates the most. Usually this is kind of like, what phase do I need to step into in order to complete this? And we're looking at this in relation to the D6, which is the advice dice. What sort of energy do I need to engage with in order to get to this whole rain, halfling, Queen of Pentacles energy of bringing everything together? And what's my advice around that? So my D8 is a 2, and that is awareness. So it's insight, focus, planning, very functional thing. It's a really good one to be, I think, with this Halfling Queen of Pentacles energy, really about like doing the things that need to be done in order to accomplish what you need. And my D6 is a 1, and that relates to security. So grounding, routine, balance, perfect with that Queen of Pentacles. So that's telling me that like I need to put plans and processes into place that really step into that Queen of Pentacle energy, that really help me to create that grounded, rooted energy that's going to support this whole thing that I want to do over here, right? Stepping into purpose. So you can see I've kind of taken this whole like game that I had a giant and a werebear and a halfling and all of that, and then I basically pulled it into a self-reflective reading. For the simplified version of the quest, I've basically taken my one tarot, my one oracle, I put my oracle in the center, and I've split my tarot deck and put half the pile on one side and half the pile on the other. So we're not going to have all of those other sort of layers and cards in here. We're just going to simplify it. We're still going to play 3 rounds. We're just going to use a single set of dice, and I'm going to go through the same process just using 2 decks and 1 set of dice. So first of all, let's go ahead and flip the card. And using like an animal deck, it's upside down. That's fun. Using like an animal deck is fun because you could, if you want to, tie that energy into the quest. So maybe while I'm on this quest, I'm like wandering through the woods, and here's the whole other layer that you could add to it is narrative. So I'm looking for this chestnut because I need to prepare for something, and I come across a squirrel. Let's see if that squirrel is going to be a friend or a foe. So is that squirrel going to help me in my quest to find the chestnut, or is it going to hinder me? So let's go ahead and roll our d20, and we got a 12. And if you remember from my number system, a 12 is going to be a friend card. So my squirrel is a friend, and I got the star. How appropriate is that? And this is where, if you're running the narrative sort of version, this is where taking notes kind of comes in handy. So I've got for round 1, I've got the squirrel who is a friend. It's going to help me find the chestnut. So let's go on to round 2. You could also shuffle your deck and pull a new card each time. I just tend to leave them stacked up like this because it makes the process a little bit easier for me. So now I'm looking at what's the next step along my quest. So now my next step is graceful persistence. Maybe I come across some thistle and I meet a hawk. So now I'm going to look at, is the hawk a friend or a foe? So I'm going to roll my dice, and I got an 8. So an 8 would be a foe. So I'm going to pull from the foe side, and we got the sun. And that's going to be really interesting when looking at it from a foe perspective. So my hawk and the thistle, maybe I get stuck in the thistle. Again, I could be diving fully into narrative, creating my own little story, a really fleshed out little quest with this. For the sake of this video and brevity, I'm not going to go to that extent. So let's see what our third round is going to bring us. We've got the spider with the passion flower and creative ingenuity. And we got a 13. So my spider is a friend. The spider is going to help me. So I'm going to pull from the friend side here. And we've got the 3 of swords. Interesting. My spider and my passion flower is going to help me with a little creative ingenuity with the 3 of swords. Let's pull this all together into a reading now. So I've spread out my 3 cards so I can just see them a little bit better. I have also sort of visually moved them around a little bit. I've kept them in their columns, right? So the squirrel with the star. I've got the squirrel up top because the squirrel is a friend. It's offering me support. So I moved the hawk underneath because the hawk is something that is preventing me from doing the thing that I need to do. It's a foe, it's a hindrance. And I've got that in alignment with the sun. Again, the spider came up as a friend, so I've got it on top, and I've got it with its 3 of swords. So I'm just using sort of visual reference there to remind myself who's friend and who's foe. Friend is up top, foe is at bottom. And then I'm just gonna do my dice casting over the top. Now for this one, I'll show you how I dice cast over the top of cards. I've definitely shown it in one-shot readings, but we'll go ahead and do it here within the context of this reading. So I'm going to cast over the top, and wow, my D12 went way, way off. I'm going to put it right here just so that we know it's there. So now I've kind of already talked about the way that I would sort of interpret these cards, like the squirrel with the chestnut, that's bringing me something to help me prepare. We've got the star, so maybe that chestnut is a seed that's going to grow into something that's going to support my future endeavors, the things that I'm trying to do. We've got the hawk here with the thistle. This is kind of giving me the idea, and again, in that faux position, kind of giving me the idea, this is kind of what's tripping me up, what's getting in my way, what's maybe taking my attention away. And we have the sun here. So I feel like it's taking my attention away from maybe the joy that I should be getting over here. So it's pulling that away from what I'm supposed to be doing. And maybe in order to get back to what it is that I'm trying to do here, or that what I'm trying to cultivate over here, that seed, again, chestnut, that seed of hope that I'm trying to cultivate, I've got the spider with passion flower and creative ingenuity with the Three of Swords. I don't read the Three of Swords as heartbreak. So for me, the Three of Swords relates more to growth of the mind. So for me, the spider and the passion flower would encourage me to maybe look at the intermingled things that I've already got an interest in, and how can I maybe pull those together in a creative way to, again, support and look at where this chestnut, this growth, this hope is going to come from, right? Or this little seed. So maybe I have other things that I need to do and expand on, need to kind of create that web of interconnected things in order to expand on that so that seed can grow. That's kind of just my first impression of the reading. Now I can dive in deeper with the dice. So I can look at my D4, like what's the source of this? I've got a 3, so I've got fire. I've got creativity, so it's on the actual seed card here, the preparation card. So again, that creative effort is what's really going to help that seed grow. For our archetype, we've got the 13, so we've got death with the star. Really interesting that there's also, playing into the imagery of this card, there's a skull on here. So maybe what needs to die in order for this seed to grow, maybe I need to look at that a little bit and see if there's some areas where I can incorporate a little bit of death to help some growth. My focus, again, remember my D12, way the heck over here, purpose, which is spirituality, wisdom, vision. This coming off way over here tells me that I am so disconnected in this moment and in this reading from my true purpose, that maybe that is what this is trying to get me to look at and trying to get me to hone back into. It's completely disconnected, not only from the other dice, but from the cards and the reading as a whole. It like went off on its own. So that tells me there's definitely something going on here. There's some disconnect between this purpose and everything that I'm getting here. So my D10s are interesting because you use 2 dice and, you know, they kind of often end up in different spots. So I've got 99 here. How funny is that? So back to that fruition, right? Same as we had before. So where I'm at in this process, and it landed on the sun and the star. So those 2 dice together on the sun and the star, that tells me that I'm like almost at this point of getting past this blockage here. Like I'm bringing it to fruition. I'm getting ready to move beyond it. And then we have our D8. Again, that's our phase. And it's sitting right here on our hawk with a 2. Again, awareness, insight, focus, planning. Like, it's great when I just do these readings back to back because it's just the same thing over and over again. And then we've got our D6, which is our advice, and I've got a 4 here, and that's harmony. And it is, again, sitting on this chestnut preparation card, but it's also touching the sun. So that's maybe something to be aware of. So just to make sure we cover all the bases, let's do one really quick, simple, down and dirty version with a single deck and a single dice. All right, for this Friends Info reading, I'm just going to deal out 6 cards face down. If you are in my membership, you will definitely recognize this format because we use it quite a bit in our own practices. So I'm going to use a single deck. I mean, you could use 2, but we're trying to like really just dial it down into a very simple, cohesive thing. I'm going to use 6 cards from one deck, and I'm going to use just 1 D20. I'm not going to actually incorporate the whole dice casting system into this one. Again, we're just really, really simplifying it. Basically, what I'm going to do is I've got this divided up. The top row is a friend. The bottom row is a foe. I'm not really looking at specific quest elements because I don't have an actual oracle in there. I'm just going to kind of pull these all together into one reading of what's supporting me and what's hindering me in the moment. I'm going to use that same numerical breakdown for the friends and foe that I've got, which again I will put below for you. So for each column, I'm just going to roll my dice. I've got an 8. That is a foe card. So I'm going to flip over one from the bottom row. My current foes right now, something that's tripping me up, is the 8 of Cups. I'm going to move on to column 2, roll again. I've got a 14, so that's a friend, so something that's supporting me. Again, might want to make a note, faux friend. They are visually on the table in those rows for that specific reason, but you definitely could make a note. So I've got the 10 of Cups that's supporting me right now. And let's do our third one is a 14. Again, that's another friend. And we have the Tower. So if I'm looking at this just as a kind of basic reading now, I'm looking at there is something here in this 8 of Cups that maybe I just need to leave behind. There is a emotional state of being that, or some sort of an emotional situation or something tied in that I just really need to leave behind. And in order to get into this 10 of Cups moment. So I'm looking at this as I need to get to this because this is what's going to support me. And in doing so, I'm going to need this Tower. So this Tower for me is going to support me. It's that shakeup that's going to get me out of this, maybe this emotional rut that I'm in over here, to get me to that harmony. So that's a really, really basic way to kind of work with this. I could, use all 6 and dice cast over the top of it if I wanted to dive in deeper. Absolutely an option, but again, just trying to drill this down into the most basic version. So that's it for this little tarot adventure reading. As always, you'll find links for everything I've shown here in the description box of this video. Thank you so much for joining me for this quest, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.